After a slew of releases in the early 80s, the slasher genre was pretty clearly defined. You needed a bad guy, a unique weapon, a group of oblivious teens, and a final girl that, despite their innocence, has an inner strength that can be called on in the grand finale. Characters would often do stupid things like running up the stairs when trying to escape a killer, or ignore the most obvious hints of someone's guilt. Yet, a film came along in 1996 that completely shifted both the slasher genre, as well as horror as a whole. Hell, we're still feeling the meta ripples even in current-day cinema. So it's finally time on Real Slashers that we take a look at the film that forever changed the slasher genre, Wes Craven's Scream.
He's sick for fucks. You've seen one too many movies.
Nah, Sid! Don't you blame the movies! Movies don't create psychos! Movies make psychos more creative!
I'm Tyler Nichols with JoBlo Horror Originals, and thank you so much for joining me for this very special episode of Real Slashers. We've covered a ton of slashers over the years, and it's finally time to put my favorite of all time in my crosshairs. Because this goes against the grain and breaks down the genre in an interesting way. And it's not all characters making the right choices 100% of the time. It's our smart lead going up the stairs when chased by a killer, despite calling out that stupidity on its own.
They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
It's losing your virginity despite every horror film saying that's a bad idea. It's going somewhere by yourself even though you know it won't end well. And in the process, giving an excuse for all the victims that came before them.
Hello?
Scream starts with an incredible opening scene with Drew Barrymore as Casey Becker. It's a fantastic scene that showcases why Ghostface is different from his brethren. He's tormenting his victim with mind games via movie trivia. I don't know about you, but that sounds right up my alley. After Casey and her boyfriend are dispatched, we meet our actual lead, Sidney Prescott. Neve Campbell is phenomenal here, and Sidney is one of the best final girls in existence. She's strong-willed and feels like the perfect slasher protagonist. In fact, let's get into all the characters. We've got Tatum Riley, Sidney's best friend and sister of Dewey Riley, the doofy deputy that is trying his best. At the height of her friend's fame, Courtney Cox appears as Gail Weathers, a news reporter who's a thorn in Sidney's side.
I'll send you a copy.
And a bit of a TMZ-style journalist. Billy Loomis is Sid's boyfriend and suspect number one. His best friend, and Tatum's boyfriend, Stu Mocker, mostly seems like he's just there to make a mockery of the situation. And finally, we have every movie buff's favorite character, Randy Meeks.
There's always some stupid bullshit reason to kill your girlfriend.
Randy is every horror fan congealed into this wisecracking video store clerk. Quickly, it becomes clear that Sidney is a target for the killer, and her boyfriend is even the prime suspect, but they smartly take suspicions away from him and are sure to have many red herrings throughout the story. And like any good slasher, while a bunch of their classmates are getting killed, what better to do than to party? The party scene in Scream's finale takes place over 42 minutes and makes up a bulk of the film's runtime, and it's easily one of the greatest set pieces in all of horror. The design of the Mocker house is wonderful, but also how they're able to separate people so effortlessly. Tatum gets asked to grab some beers and is locked in the garage, forced to take on Ghostface. She meets a pretty grisly demise and proves that garage door openers are strong as hell. Randy is left to watch movies by himself while Dewey and Gail prowl the perimeter to try and keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. And even a kill that seems fairly random earlier, the Fonz himself as the principal getting murderlated, comes back in a big way.
They found Principal Henry dead. He was gutted and hung from the goalpost on the football field.
Who wouldn't want to leave a party to go see their principal strung up on a goalpost at the football stadium? Wait, don't answer that. But it's a great way to whittle down the partygoers and give Ghostface some opportunities for mayhem. Before long, nearly everyone is separated, and Ghostface is able to take them out, one by one. It's expertly crafted, with the killer's location always being thought out and logical. Even the red herrings are still in full force, with even Randy getting suspicion cast on him. Which is when we get the greatest killer reveal in all of horror. And we'll talk about that next.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
No, Billy!
Your slasher is only as good as your villain, and Ghostface was able to enter the pop culture zeitgeist almost immediately upon release, with his trademark elongated white face, black cloak, combat boots, and hunting knife. Ghostface pretty quickly found himself in the conversation, with greats like Freddy, Michael, and Jason. And it's no surprise after that memorable opening scene and slowed down run towards Drew Barrymore. But another thing that makes him stand out is his ability to actually speak to his victims. He's not a silent stalker type like Jason or Michael. He takes more of a Freddy Krueger approach to his killings. He toys with his victims over the phone. He's knowledgeable, not only of his victims, but also movies, which he uses to toy with them. Yet who's exactly behind the mask? In the first Scream, Stu Macher and Billy Loomis take up the mantle of Ghostface. Billy wants revenge against Sidney's mom, Maureen Prescott, for tearing his own family apart. She had slept with Billy's father and caused his mother to leave them. So he murders Maureen and places the blame on someone else Maureen was sleeping with, Cotton Weary. Which, I mean, imagine you have to cast a side role in your horror movie, and you end up lucky enough to cast Liev fucking Schreiber. Talk about lucky. Either way, Billy is pissed and he decides killing Maureen just isn't enough. So he's going to kill Sidney and a bunch of her friends on the 1-year anniversary. Then he'll blame it on Sidney's father, completely tearing the family apart, in the same way that Billy perceived his own to be torn apart. Then as for Stu's motivations, I mean,
Peer pressure. I'm far too sensitive.
But they bite off more than they can chew and are thwarted by a combination of distractions from Gale and quick thinking from Sid. Stu gets a TV in the face for his efforts, while Billy proves that…
Careful. This is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
That's why she always outsmarted the killer in the big chase scene at the end. Only virgins can do that. Don't you know the rules? What rules? You don't… There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
Scream puts all slashers in its sights and makes sure you never look at them the same way again. By deconstructing horror, and more specifically the slasher genre, the film was able to provide an angle not yet seen before on screens. And the meta-ness really shows through during Randy's speech. See, when Stu's holding a party at his place to help distract from the murders, or so he says, Randy takes this as the perfect opportunity to show everyone some horror movies. It's like preparation.
Terror Train, Prom Night. How come Jamie Lee Curtis is in all of these movies?
So they know what dumb character decisions in slashers look like. And like any good movie buff, he has to interrupt the film with interesting facts. But hey, this time I'd say it's worth it. These are Randy's 3 rules to successfully survive a horror movie. Number 1, no hanky-panky, sex leads to death. Mostly. Number 2, no drugs or no drinking alcohol. This will go punished. And finally, never say I'll be right back, because you won't be. But there's so much more to it, as each of these incidents is shown as thwarted during the rest of the runtime. All of these kids are drinking and doing drugs, and they all just leave. Hell, in the midst of Randy's speech, Sidney is losing her virginity to Billy. And sure, the circumstances are a bit iffy, but we don't see Stu for quite a while after this.
I'll be right back!
Even though the film may not be strict at abiding by them, having the characters acknowledge all the ways that would usually get them killed in a situation like this further separates it from the more straightforward horror of the 80s. While there's certainly a place for both, Scream helped it evolve.
Can I be the helpless victim? Okay, let's see. No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel.
Scream released in the United States on December 18, 1996, and only brought in $6.4 million on its opening weekend. This was not a spectacular opening, but the film had legs, ending its run at $173 million. The film was a massive success with critics, with a 78% fresh rating for the usually hated slasher genre. It was the kind of movie that you could get people to watch and enjoy despite their own preconceived notions. They didn't have to like slashers. If anything, having any sort of opinion on horror just further helps sell the circumstances in the film, positive or negative. The Scream franchise would become an absolute juggernaut. We would receive 5 additional entries, with the 7th film expected to arrive in 2025. Whether that movie is able to capture the same magic as the original is anyone's guess, though it definitely has a lot working against it at this point. Thankfully, the original Scream remains to be one of the most influential horror films of all time. It completely changed how modern audiences look at the horror genre. You can't see a horror film these days without seeing Scream's meta influence. And you sure as hell can't ask the question,
What's your favorite scary movie?
without thinking of Scream.